So today we've got a very special collaboration, getting everyone worked up for Halloweens. We're working with DorsetGhost Mysteries this time. And this guy's actually a really cool friend of mine. I met him a while ago, and he was actually the very first collaboration I did. So I thought it only appropriate to bring him back in for this month of Halloween. We hope you enjoy this collaboration, and if you do, don't forget to leave a like, and head over to Dorset's channel so you can subscribe to his channel and catch the other part of this collaboration video. Let's begin. Before we get to this specific day, I would like to mention that some of these people are still out there, so for safety purposes, all names will be replaced. I will also not tell you where I live, but it's somewhere in Europe. So first, a little background story. I was 22 at the time, and my boyfriend and I had been clean for about 6 months. The life we lived before was filled with hard drugs every day, and in a small town like ours, the circle of those kinds of people is small, and everyone knows what everyone's sitting on and are up to. It's just one large group of people, and it's like they're nesting together. And because of their constant proximity matched with the drugs, they eventually become so paranoid that they lose anything resembling trust towards one another. It becomes a never-ending season of weeding out each other, and people continuously disappear, found beaten to the brink of death, or simply gotten rid of. Anyway, it was Easter, and we spent the last year and a half in my in-laws' house out in the woods. So this weekend we just had this strong urge to party in the city. We called one of our old friends that we deemed trustworthy to ask if he could hook us up. His name was Vince. He sounded very happy to help, as usual, and said he was sitting on some E, speed, and ethylphenidate. He seemed eager to help out and invited us to come over and hang out, so we did. When we got there was just Vince and a girl that we only knew from a distance, Jane. Jane was known to be batshit crazy, and all the previous bump-ins I've had with her have left me with very, very bad vibes, knowing that she's been involved one way or another in the previous murders or disappearances taking place in the same circle of people. That is why I was happy to see she was passed out on the sofa. Vince was happy to see us. After all, it had been a while. My boyfriend exchanged money for 4 pills of E, and to our delightful surprise, he gave us 4 more for free. So me and my boyfriend took 4 each, and while we waited for it to hit, Vince lit up a huge bowl of his homemade spice. For those of you who don't know what spice is, as I believe it to be a European thing, it started off as synthetic weed, but developed over the years, and its effects and side effects can be compared to heroin. Vince made his own, and he made it strong. My boyfriend declined the offer, but I accepted after Vince himself had hit it. It instantly punched me in the brains, and it wasn't pleasant. It was like taking a hit of a nightmarish roller coaster. I felt sick and very disoriented, and all I could manage to utter was a mumbled, "I need to lie down." I made it to the sofa and collapsed, and all I could do was to focus on not falling off the edge of the earth. I don't know how long I laid like that, but when I finally opened my eyes, I quickly wished I hadn't. Jane was sitting on the edge of the sofa right beside me, and just stared at me with crazy eyes, absent of any concern. She started moving her head back and forth, like a snake, and I'm sure she was purposely trying to freak me out. "Are you okay?" she asked, with a slow voice and the weirdest look on her face, looking as if hoping my answer would be no. I nodded, and gathered all the strength I had left to make it to the bathroom, where I threw up. When I was done, feeling better, I went into the kitchen where Vince was stating scoldly, "Now you threw up the E!" then asked if I wanted more. I declined, knowing by the familiar buzz that not all of the E had gone to waste. It was rather unusual for him to be concerned with my high, but at the same time, I didn't think anything of it. Vince instead asked if I'd like a line of ethyl, so I did. The four of us then decided to go outside and walk to a tiny peninsula connected with the city. People have often gone there, so not to be bothered by the cops or other, and it's a beautiful place. We sat there for a while, chilling and enjoying ourselves with what was invading our bloodstreams. This is where things take a turn. I was gradually becoming more and more fucked up and was kinda busy enjoying my buzz. While I was completely out of it, my boyfriend, who wasn't as far gone as I was, felt things turning shady and grew more and more suspicious of Vince and Jane and their true intentions. He'd known Vince for many years and could tell something was up. Suddenly, Vince gave his phone to my boyfriend, saying, "It's Ned." Both me and my boyfriend froze, exchanging glances. Now, Ned used to be very close to my boyfriend, going back at least 8 years. But 6 months back from this time, they had a falling out over who owed what, and my boyfriend had been rather vocal about his anger towards Ned, and he wasn't afraid to express his dislike for the guy to the people in the circle, making it clear that he wanted nothing to do with him. Not realizing that people had rallied on Ned's side, because he was at the time the one who was sitting on the most drugs in town. After a few seconds of tension, my boyfriend took the phone. "Hey man, what's up?" His jaw was clenched. "Yeah, I'm with Vince and Jane. Where are you?" It was a short conversation, and I remember it to be a very strange one. My boyfriend sounded normal, while I could see he was anything but happy or relaxed. "Ned is coming here," he said, and looked at me. And even through my haze, I could see something was wrong. "Let's leave," I insisted, and as we got ready to get the fuck out of there, a car pulled up to Vince, and he looked over at us. "Meet up at my place?" We agreed, and started walking the short journey back to the city. Jane, who'd come with us, said she needed to go to the ATM to get some cash. We found one, and Jane suddenly turned to my boyfriend. "You do it," she urged, and handed him her card. Puzzled, he entered the given code and took out the amount of cash she'd asked for, giving her it and the receipt. Jane took a moment to examine the receipt, suspicion growing on her face. "This isn't right," she said, and glared accusingly at my boyfriend. We both gave her a look that said, "What the fuck are you trying to pull?" I mean, the receipt and cash were right there, in her hand. Eventually, she gave up her trying to pin theft on my boyfriend, and we all agreed to go back to Vince's apartment. In hindsight, I believe it was an attempt to add purpose to a crime that was about to take place. When we got there, the place was full of people, sitting on the sofas and the bed. They were older, all of them junkies or ex-convicts, and they were all acting very strange. They were silent, and threw constant glances back and forth to each other, purposefully avoiding to look at my boyfriend, yet at the same time, it was very apparent that he was the target in the room. The entire atmosphere in the apartment had gone from seemingly friendly to hostile as fuck. My boyfriend, already tense and wary, overheard Vince muttering to one of the shady-looking guys that Ace and his people are coming. Now Ace was basically a Nazi, and had before tried to lure my boyfriend to remote places to take beatings or possibly to be taken care of, for the reasons of my boyfriend having expressed his liberal and anti-racist opinion in front of him. It should also be mentioned that at this point, Ace was also very close to Ned. My boyfriend instantly went up to me and urged that we get the fuck out of there. We both looked over at Vince, who was now sitting whispering to Jane. That is when we noticed Jane having a knife in her hand, which she tried to pass over to Vince, but he firmly shook his head and gestured by twice hitting a clenched fist into his palm, and his eyes met with my boyfriend's. My boyfriend grabbed me and pulled me out of the apartment, and we flew down the stairs. When we were hurrying back home, my boyfriend updated me on the signs I had obviously not noticed. Being as fucked up as I was, I could hardly speak or think straight. In hindsight, I suspect that was part of their plan. He had been suspecting something was up since we left Vince's apartment the first time. I had only started to actually get the situation when we went up there the second time. I went into full panic. We hurried through town to get home, paranoid and in shock. Had we stayed moments longer, I am certain that they would have killed us. These people aren't the type to stop beating when it's enough. I'm writing this 2 years later, and I have since moved away to start a new life. But I wasn't surprised when I was told 6 months ago Vince was found dead and robbed. Many people think, me included, that Ace was behind it. Ned and Jane are now a couple, and I don't want to begin to think of what awful things they are doing to other people, now as a team. If any of you doubt that some really bad things could have happened that day, let me inform you that Ace, just days ago, got convicted for arson and first-degree murder. His ex-girlfriend had just 1 day prior to the deed broken up with him, and so he brought 20 liters of gasoline and emptied it into her apartment and lit it on fire, locking her in to die in the flames. For me, it was a big shock to discover that Vince would betray us that severely. He'd been a really good friend to us, and he was a decent guy. I realize I sound naive, but when you're living that kind of life, those people are the only ones who you understand, and frankly, wants anything to do with you. I still have big issues with trusting people, and often misread people for wanting to hurt me in some way. As I said, I have moved away from the town and am now living a clean life, but I still have dark thoughts. For example, I sincerely and wholeheartedly hope that Ace, when in prison, can figure out how to use his sheet in more than one way, and until he does, may he drop his soap many times over. This next story is narrated by DorsetGhost Mysteries. I'll have an annotation on the screen and a link in the description so you can go over to his channel and subscribe.
I just want to say thank you to Yearmaker for allowing me to post on his awesome channel. I am 19-year-old female, but at the time this creepy encounter happened, I was maybe 7, 8. The oldest I was at the time was 10. I have a horrible memory. Ask the guy I've been sleeping with for the past year. However, these encounters I remember as if they were yesterday. My mum and dad had been separated ever since I was young, and having me when they were young made them feel like they needed to go out and have all the fun that they missed when they were in their 20s. My mum had taken me to her friend's Beatrice house for a party that they were going to have. I always hated this friend. She was always so mean to me and my brother, calling me mean names and rhyming my name with very crude things. I don't think I've ever told my mum or my dad because I've always been very shy and always wanting people to be happy with me. Arriving at the party, Beatrice immediately called me a mean name and sent me to the bedroom. Her bedroom that locked from the inside. That was where I would be sleeping for the night while all the adults partied downstairs. I guess my mum couldn't find a babysitter in time, or maybe she didn't have money for a babysitter. I don't remember where my brother was, but he wasn't with me, making me feel even more alone. My mum came upstairs to tuck me in and told me to make sure to lock the door once she left, and to not let anyone in no matter what. If she needed to come in, she would call my name and tell me it was her. Being the compliant little girl that I was, I swore I wouldn't open the door to anyone. As my mother left to go and get drunk, I locked the door and made sure it was locked. I didn't want my mum to be disappointed in me if the door wasn't locked. After checking to see if the door was locked several times, I went to bed. As I laid on my back listening to the Latin music being played and all the people laughing and obviously having a good time, I slowly drifted to sleep. I awoke to hear the knob to Beatrice's door jiggling, as if someone was trying to come in. That was strange, I thought. I didn't know how long I slept. Maybe it was Mum telling me it was time to go home, but it was still dark out, and I could still hear the laughter and joy that was filling the living room downstairs. The door started jiggling again, but more subtle now, as if the person on the other side knew there was a little girl sleeping on the other side. I froze. I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Instinct, maybe. Even at 7 years of age, I knew that whoever was on the other side of the door did not have good intentions for me. My eyes were strained on the door, or the direction of the door, as there was a wall that blocked the view of the actual door, and if you were to enter the room, you're in a mini hallway going into the bedroom. My eyes had grown accustomed to the darkness, and all I could do was lay frozen on my back, with eyes trained in the direction of the door. After what felt like an hour of this person trying to get in the room, they gave up. I could hear them walk downstairs and rejoin the party. I was terrified. I kept my ears strained to see if I could hear the slightest jiggle of the knob, and my eye trained in the direction of the door. I didn't know what to do. Mind you, I was the shy little girl who also had an adult who would bully her, so going downstairs wasn't an option. Maybe they wouldn't come back. Maybe if I stayed up all night and watched the door, they wouldn't come back. I awoke again to the same noise, doorknob jiggling. Petrified, I laid in bed and prayed that they wouldn't be able to come in. Why did they want to get in so badly? This time was different. It wasn't the soft jiggle of trying to get in and not waking the sleeping girl. It was frantic and terrifying. It seemed like they were on a mission to get in here if it was the last thing they did. Click. They were in. He was in. As I laid in bed, he poked his head from the side of the wall where the door was. "Why aren't you downstairs?" I stayed silent. "Come downstairs and drink." Silence. "You're beautiful. Come." This time I shook my head. "Okay, maybe later, baby." He left. Just like that, I felt my innocence leave my tiny being. I got up and ran to the door and locked it, and ran back to the bed and cried. Thinking back, he could have easily been hiding in the entryway and just closing the door for show, making it seem like he had left and waiting for me to fall back asleep. Thankfully, he wasn't. I tried to keep my eyes open and ear on alert so that if he came back, I wouldn't be caught off guard. I don't exactly remember what happened the next day, but I do remember telling my mum that a man had come into my room last night. I got yelled at for not locking the door, but I had insisted that I did, and that this man kept trying to get in even when the door was clearly locked. I don't recall if I had told my mum what he said to me, but I described him to my mother. A tall man with brownish skin, typical Latin American skin colour. He had glasses with jet black hair, and he was very good looking. I had seen him around a few times, but I never bothered to learn his name, so I couldn't give that vital piece of information to her. I had gone right to bed when he had arrived at Beatrice Place, not seeing a single person at the party. My mother confirmed that someone with that description was at the party, and that she would talk to him and he wouldn't be invited over again. That was the end of that, until a couple of months later, my birthday. An excuse for my mum to throw a party at our house this time. This time my brother was in the house as well. Before the party started, my mum made me sleep in her room because her room was the only room in the house that had a lock. My brother would have to sleep in my room with another child that they brought to the party. As I laid in my mum's bed, I felt uneasy. Was he here? Would the same thing happen? This time I was worried for not only my safety, but for my young brothers and for the little boy that was also sleeping in the room over. I didn't fall asleep this time. I was determined to stay awake, because what if I wasn't the target this time, but it was my innocent brother that had a target on his back? Don't mess with a girl's little brother. I heard my door start to jiggle. Not again, I thought. I knew that he would be here. To this day I don't know how I knew without even knowing who was downstairs at the party. This is why to this day I always count on my instinct. Mind you, I was a young girl who was terrified, but was determined that if he got in, I would scream. After hearing this sound, I knew immediately he had gotten in and sat up right away facing to the door, ready to scream if he tried to get close to me. "You're sleeping?" he asked. I just stared at him, making sure not to breathe too fast or make any sudden movements. "You're sexy, baby." Silence. "Come drink with me." It wasn't a question, it sounded more of an order. Now, I thought, "No." I started to moan and made sure that my no kept getting higher pitched. Okay. He tried to quickly shush me, and he left immediately. I made sure to wait a couple minutes and left the safety of my bedroom and went to my room, where my brother was and the little boy. I had a king bed, so we could easily all fit in, and I was determined to not leave these little kids. They didn't know what this man was capable of, and I was going to protect them if it was the last thing I did. I was wide awake, and it had been maybe 30 minutes since this man with glasses had come into my mum's room, when I heard my mum's voice and another voice getting closer to the door. Yes, my lovely mother was coming to check up on my brother to see if he was asleep, and I knew this was my chance to tell her about the man who came into my room. I got out of bed and started to walk to the door when she slowly opened it and saw me. I froze. Right beside her, talking to my mum, was the man. The man who had come into my room twice now, and who could have easily done horrible things to me. Mind you, at that age I didn't know about sex or rape or anything of the sorts, so I thought he'd kill me. But he was right there. "Why aren't you in my room?" my mum asked, confused. I started to cry hard. "He came in my room," I sobbed. "Who?" the man asked. "You!" I cried harder. "Me?" he said, pointing to himself, as if he hadn't heard me right. "Yeah, I wanted to protect Ethan, mummy. I was scared he'd come back for Ethan," I whimpered. "She told me you came into her room before." "Go to my room, Delilah, and lock the door," my mum whispered harshly. The whole time, the man denying he didn't do anything and trying to convince her that I was imagining things. I went to my mother's room and laid on my mum's bed, and I could hear my mum crying and telling him to leave. I heard more people talking, and then a few minutes later, the music came back on and I fell asleep. I don't know if he left the party or not, but I do know that no one tried to get in my room again that night. A year later, after telling my dad and him wanting his name and telling me he'd kill him if he saw him, I hadn't given much thought to the man again. My mum and I went to the multicultural building in our town because she needed some paperwork done and whatnot. Walking into the building, I see the man crouched down doing some type of wood work on the floors. He sees us and immediately says hello to my mum, to which my mum says hello happily, and they chit chat for a bit before we are on our way. The man not looking at me once. He maybe said hello to me too, but I don't remember any interaction whatsoever. I was so annoyed that my mum was so chipper and happy to talk to the man who broke into my room twice. But being that good little daughter, I didn't tell her any of that. It had seemed as if she had forgotten all about him forcing himself into a locked door. That was the last time I ever saw him, and that was maybe 9-10 years ago. I've only ever told this to my mum and dad, my best friend, and the man I lost my virginity to. I think that this will always be my most creepiest encounter with anyone.
So I'm in my 3rd year of college, and I just broke up with my boyfriend of 3 years and started dating again. I dated one guy from literature class, but we didn't work out, so I was single once again. One random Saturday afternoon around August, a guy named Chris added me on Facebook. I saw he was studying the same program in our uni, so I accepted him. He started to like all of my photos and statuses at first, so it wasn't creepy. It was unusual for him to like my photos from way back in 2011, but I didn't give it a second thought. He was around 5'11" and had the build of an athlete. He was a college freshman, but we were at the same age, and he started chatting with me. It started as a friendly conversation. Then, that's when I noticed that instead of asking for my number, he sent me a copy of my number, and then asked, "This is your number, right?" Weirded out, I asked him where he got my number, because I never gave out my number, even to my classmates, since I was a lazy texter anyways. But all he replies was, "Winky face." Monday came, and he started texting me. I didn't reply to most of his messages, and he slowly got mad at me, until he flooded my inbox from 10 messages up to 300 messages and 80 missed calls. He also told me, ever since classes started, he was already spying on me when we had dance rehearsals for our program or school events. He also admitted that he used to follow me until I got a ride home. He probably thought that was cute, but that immediately creeped me out. Then he asked me out. I refused immediately, because I was still not emotionally ready to be in a relationship, and I was already creeped out by him. But I turned him down politely, and told him he deserved someone better. But he was insistent, and told me, "I don't care. I'm going to wait for you. I'll never stop until I make you mine." That's when I started noticing him everywhere I go near the university. He was like an annoying shadow. He would be at the cafeteria, outside my classrooms, and he even knows my best friend's Facebooks, although we don't even study at the same uni. He also added all of my ex-boyfriends, although I only maintained communication with just one. He also tries to be friendly with my blockmates, but my blockmates noticed I was very uncomfortable, so they didn't communicate with him, which made him mad, and he would send messages to me and complain, although I never replied. The final straw was when I was joking to my close friend as we were going to the restroom, and I said, "What I wouldn't give for a bottle of Sprite." And when we got back to my room, I had to leave the room again and get some lunch, but then when I got back, my blockmate handed me a bottle of Sprite. "That's from Chris," he said, confused. Then I received a message asking me, "So what will you give me? I gave you Sprite." I immediately threw the bottle away from me. I was starting to freak out, so I tried to contact him via text because I really didn't want to talk to him in person. But he kept calling me my girl and my penguin drummer, which really pissed me off. I told him to stop calling me his because I don't like him, and the only thing he replied was, "I'm going to wait for you outside your classroom so we can go home together. I won't take no for an answer." Afraid and nervous, I asked my blockmates to help because I really didn't know the guy, and they told me I should block his number and his Facebook, which I immediately did. Then, I asked the last guy I dated to come pick me up from my room, even just for that day because I was already scared. Thank God he immediately agreed. The next day, I was so afraid to go out of the room. My blockmates were nice enough to buy me lunch and check to see if the guy was there. And my gay friend told me the guy was already waiting, and James, the last guy I dated, was looking at him menacingly. When James called my name, I immediately ran towards him, and he wrapped one arm around me protectively. I didn't look at Chris, and I was about to cry. But thankfully, James walked me out of the uni until I could get a ride home. My phone was suddenly filled with blocked calls and messages that night, and although I tried to ignore and delete it immediately, I saw a few blocked messages from Chris asking me why I lied to him, why I broke his trust. Then, the worst day came. It was a Friday night, about 2 weeks ago, and it was raining hard. It was around 7:30 p.m., and we just finished doing a project for our major subject. And as I walked out of our uni, I realized I don't have anyone to be with when I go home, since most of my friends lived on the other side of town. So I just put on a brave face and walked out of the uni alone. Then I heard someone whistle at me right beside the gate, and I saw it was Chris. I tried to ignore him, because it was at least 5-minute walk before I could get a ride home, but I could feel him following me. I couldn't run because I was wearing heels and it was raining hard. I could hear him calling me, "My penguin drummer! I want to talk! Please, come here! Please, I miss you so much! I miss the way we talk!" I was so tempted to run, but I knew I wouldn't be able to outrun him as he was stronger and faster. And I couldn't ask for help because there were no cars passing at the time. I heard him coming nearer. Suddenly, I saw 2 of James' friends running towards me with an umbrella. I sobbed right there in their arms as they asked if Chris had hurt me or anything. Then I heard screaming, and I looked back to see James screaming at his friend Chris, and he was screaming back at him. James was about to throw a punch at Chris, but he was being pulled back by his friend. James was telling him off and saying, "Stay the fuck away from my girl!" And Chris answered, "No! She's not yours anymore! She's my penguin drummer! She was never yours to begin with, and if you try to get near her again, I will fucking end you!" Chris seemed to get scared, which was unexpected, as James was thinner and was not even an active person, but he backed down and walked away. The rest of the boys calmed me down before making sure I got home safely. I learned that before James went out of the campus, he noticed that all of the friends I'm with live on the opposite side of town, and I was alone to go home. And he felt something was not right, so he decided to smoke with his friends at the 7-Eleven near our uni and wait for me to get out. The next morning, I managed to talk to my professors about Chris, and they told me they're going to talk to him, and if he does anything stupid or threatening, he's going straight to the dean's office, or something. But since then, I have deleted most of the threatening messages and creepy confessions. They couldn't really punish Chris unless he had done something big again. The weeks after, I still see him in the hallways, or when we are at school activities involving all students from our program, but he doesn't do anything anymore. I already changed numbers and made sure he won't be able to receive any information about me. James and I are still friends. Although he asked me out, he's not pressuring me, which is good. And he makes sure Chris steers out of the way. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and head immediately over to DorsetGhost Mysteries channel to check out the other part of our collaboration video. He also comes out with a lot of great videos. He's got a lot of true scary stories, as well as a lot of awesome lists that he puts out. I highly recommend you go check him out. Some of them will keep your jaw dropped the entire video. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you back here for another video tomorrow. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.